yours. My life is fun.
Isn't it strange, Chicago? When we first met, I had no power and all the choices I could ever want. Now I have all the power I could ever want and no choices at all.
This is not my family. You are not my father. And the breath I take after I kill you will be the first breath of my life.
We need to go.
Whose brother holds this hammer, if he be worthy, he should possess our soul.
How did you avoid capture?
Well, I did. Yeah.
You used to always tell him, you never start a fight, you always finish it. And I didn't start this fight, but I'm finish it.
So having done a lot of stuff, I was having a conversation with a guy at Fox about 2 years ago, and I mentioned I had 4 films made in 4 years, and I said, ain't bad. And he said, that's not bad for a studio. And this got a pebble going down a hill to gather more pebbles and start a landslide. As I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to create a safe harbor for myself, a studio, a mini studio, if you will, a mini DreamWorks kind of operation, which would allow me the freedom and the creativity to do what I wanted to do, to cover comics, television, movies, games, basically anything that I wanted to do, and would allow me to then, bring up properties from comics to television, television to movies, movies to comics. And I'm somewhat known for being cranky, and I like getting my own way. So wouldn't it be amazing to have my own studio, where I can, have a safe harbor, go out and do stuff for other people, of course, but come back to that safe harbor and run my own creative operation. But that's a really big dream. That's a massive, freaking dream. But let me ask you a question. Where is it written that our dreams should be small? Hint. Lights. first thing I did, how many remember the Joe's Comics imprint? Joe's Comics was an imprint that I created with Top Cow to do quality comic books that really had a good story to tell. Rising Stars was done for Joe's Comics, Midnight Nation. And I stepped away from Joe's Comics to do stuff for Marvel and for DC and others. And I recently went back to Image and said, I want to bring back Joe's Comics as an imprint under Image to do original creator-owned stuff of my own, and we'll put it out to the Joe's Comics imprint. And then Eric Stevenson said, are you cool with that? I said, absolutely. We made a deal. We have a deal now with Image Comics to bring back this line. Start showing the first slides of this. You just keep down the lights until we tell me to bring them up. Just keep down the lights. Thank you. This is sidekick. I always liked the idea of the sidekick, like robbing the boy hostage. And this is the cowl who was, he wore a cowl, so he called himself the cowl. And his sidekick, Flyboy, named because he was a boy and, well, he could fly. And the cowl disappears, is killed, murdered, and the Flyboy has to become his own guy. And as it turns out, no one accepts him. To the bad guys, he's a laughingstock. To the good guys, he's also a laughingstock. And he keeps trying to prove himself worthy, and gets further and further on this trail to madness and just to depression and despair. He goes to local small companies to try to get sponsorship, get Bob's Garage, you know, and he's out staging robberies to try and solve them himself. And it's a really darkly comic story about a guy's descent into madness and depression and death. So it's a comedy. Bear in mind, I'm Russian. We find these things very funny. So that's going to be one of the comics. That's Jerry Ordway, by the way. We're getting the best artists around for these books. That's Jerry Ordway's cover for the first issue of Sidekick. And the next one is this Falling Angel. Angel being not the character on the left, but the character on the right. Angel Hernandez, who is an average young woman trying to get by in the world, very conservative in her ways, sees this apparition, this figure, in an alley dying. But this is a character who is known as Lady Knight, who is really one of the most dangerous villainesses of this universe, and reaches to help her, and all of a sudden there's a transference that takes place, and all of a sudden she becomes Lady Knight, and where Lady Knight was, there's an old woman who was dying. And what she wants to do, because she's a good person at heart, is to try and reform the Lady Knight name and power by trying to use it to do good stuff, but again, there's a problem with being accepted. There's a thing where you go back home and your parents are there and they never see you any differently than they saw you 20 years ago. It's that kind of a scenario. So the A is trying to revive and sort of reestablish the Lady Knight name. B, she is being pulled toward the urges of that person because that person is still alive inside of her and has the desire to do wrong. And third, there's a mystery. Who killed Lady Knight and why? And that person's going to come after her. That story, that mystery, becomes the core of Falling Angel. The next one being 10 grand. This guy named Joe. No, not him. And he was a police investigator, police officer who was deeply in love with this woman, and he was pulled into an investigation of a cult. And of course, that investigation, she was killed, and he was transformed, let's say. And he is still mortal in the sense that he can be hurt, he feels pain, but he can't die. Except under very extreme conditions, where he's pursuing a case that has merit, that is just, that is right. He can die for 1 minute. In that 1 minute, he can be with the woman he loves. So he seeks out cases that basically he charges 10 grand to weed out the losers and bring in real people, in the hope that he would pursue a case that is virtuous enough and right enough that he'll die for 1 minute and be with her. So that's 10 grand. The next one being Guardians. We have a world where most of the powers are corporate. There's corporate sponsorship, corporate powers. They all work for the Guardian Corporation. And this guy who is a homicide detective has just scorn for them. These are point of view characters, all built from the ground up. And he has no interest in or care for the Guardians. until one day when he is called upon to a murder scene, and one of the guardians has been murdered. And these guys never actually fight. They compete with each other like teams in different sports events will compete, but no one's ever actually gotten hurt until now. Someone's been murdered. And the question is, who killed this guy? Who killed this guardian? And he is given the job of finding out who did what to whom and how. And it's sort of seeing that world of superheroes from the ground up as he unravels the story of who committed this murder. So that's Guardians. What we have next is, I can't see my own notes now. Web series, yes. So Apocalypse Al, The Adventures of Apocalypse Al. This is a deal we made with MTV. This is going ahead. Most of these, virtually all of these are going ahead. These are not things we're speculating about. These are all things we have deals for. The Adventures of Apocalypse Al for MTV.com. It's a woman who specializes in preventing the end of the world. It's sort of the Maltese Falcon meets Monty Python. Again, I like dark humor, and I like things that are sort of like an edge to it. So we have this character who has her sources of information to deal with the end of the world. She has a mad prophet who lives under a fridge. She's got a dead boyfriend, which is the only good kind of boyfriend I understand. She's got a zombie police officer who works for her. She lives in this very mad world. She's like the only sane person left in it. And we see her pursuing her case to try and save the world from harm. Now, in terms of the second web series that we're doing, I was thinking, how best do I explain this? How best can I present to you the idea of what it is that we're doing? And I thought, well, I could just say it and talk about it. Or I could do something a tad different. As you sit there in the dark, and what the fuck's he up to now? So let's give you a sense of what we're after. So why don't you hit the next piece of film? In my Facebook page, I promise something you have never seen before. I don't lie about these things. Thank you to the field dancers for song earlier. Which brings us to the darkness of the room and the darkness of the next slide. Living Dead, the musical. I kind of wanted to do something which takes and has some fun with the zombie craze. And you've got post-apocalyptic, post-zombie environments where you have three teams trying to get the sanctuary. And one of them is Aunt Babs, who was based on Bishop Palmer's character from Planet of the Dead, who actually be in this, trying to get to her niece, and her boyfriend and the woman who's traveling with them from coming in the other direction. And they're college students, they're trying to get through and survive. And they're being followed by Dave the zombie, who is in love with one of them. And is just constantly following after them, hoping he can get to wherever they see, they hit him with a car, just fuck you. And then we have another guy named Terry, who is a very rich guy coming from Texas, who has a zombie ensemble of people who work for him. Because in this, what I decided to do with the zombie mythology was to set up that death makes you more of what you were in the first place. So if you were really obsessed with cooking, even though you're following the George Romero theory, you're always cooking things and making things in the background, or you're always shopping. That's the big thing to you, as we saw in the other movies. And if you were a secret cross-dresser, you're walking around, you're dressed in that fashion. And the whole point of this is to have some fun with the notion of what it is to be a zombie in this environment. And we have songs that are being written right now, such as "There were zombies in Jersey and nobody cared." "Stop shooting at me." "It's not my fault that I'm dead." The bottom line memorial is shit-kicking zombie choir. So this is going to go ahead next year as well. So we have 2 different web series we're going ahead with. And what's the last thing we have to do with it? The film. Yes. Lights on for a moment, please. There's a film I've been trying to get up on the rails for a while now. We finally have already a partial financing in place. We're all the actors now. And I will be directing this under the Studio JMS imprint next year in Berlin. And here's a brief synopsis of what that film is all about. Darkness will come now.
Toward the latter part of World War II, Leni Riefenstahl was shooting a film in Berlin entitled Tiefland, set in Spain in the 1800s. For this, she needed extras, bit players, and others who looked Spanish, of which there were very few in Germany at that time. So she ordered in. She contracted with a gypsy concentration camp to rent men, women, and children for her movie. During the day, they were on set, being fed, cleaned up, looked after, and at night, back in the camp again. So for many of them, the movie became reality, and the camp became the dream, or the nightmare. The Flickering Light, based on this true story, is a film about hope, about our ability to find something to hold on to that will let us winnow through that black and implacable wall of death to something better. It's about film as escape, literal and metaphorical, and a previously unexplored chapter of history that could only be told in a movie.